in St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 15. I hope everybody's all right. And the Gospel of Luke is actually called the Gospel of the universal grace of God. And the emphasis, of course, is the Son of Man. And what it does is it emphasizes the Christ, Jesus's sympathetic attitude towards the disenfranchised. His attitude towards the lowly, the outcasts. And it shows a great sensitivity that the Messiah has to have for the Samaritans, for publicans, for sinners. And even in that day, it is significant that Jesus was very sensitive towards women. It is in the sensitivity of his expression that Luke has become known as the gospel of devotion, because it's in the place of sensitivity that the devout give honor to God for his grace. It is something significant about having gone through something and having been lowly and outcast that evokes and stimulates an ebullient desire to worship God. You have to have been low in order to understand the height that the Lord has taken you to, and the immediate appreciation for his magnanimous grace drives you into deep devotion. I noted a couple of things that are significant. One is that some of the greatest Christian hymns have been taken from the gospel. The Ave Maria, the Magnificat, the Benefacto, the Gloria in Excelsis. It is here that God has given great expression because of the sympathetic attitude that Jesus has. Luke deals with compassion. Ugh. And when I look then at Luke chapter 15, he deals now very intricately with lost things. Of course, we've got the woman who lost the coin and the lost sheep. And it's interesting because in order to regain the lost sheep, the shepherd has to track the sheep. He has to go after the sheep. He has to follow the sheep into all of the places that the sheep has gone, like the Lord followed us and tracked us, tracked you. You ever get out of the wrong bed and all of a sudden you feel real guilty? That was the Lord tracking you. Yes, yes. The primary story, though, in Luke 15 is the prodigal son. And I begin reading there in about verse 11. And if you want to stand, let us all stand. If we're going to sit, let us all sit. And I'll read quickly. And he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to the father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, There arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me, put a pin on that, as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father, but when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him, and had compassion, and ran, fell on his neck, and kissed him. And the son said unto the father, I have sinned against heaven in thy sight, and no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger, shoes on his feet, bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to be merry. Now his eldest son was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. I mean, nobody even called him. And he said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he answered, said to his father, lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It is meet that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead, and is alive again, and was lost, and is found. And as you're sitting down, just look at somebody beside you and say, I'm glad you're back. Just look at the other person on the other side and say, I'm back. I am going to approach this in maybe not the most ordinary fashion in terms of interpretation. And I want to begin with what I won't deal with later. I want to begin with our concept and our theological deduction of the attitude of the elder brother. I believe in many circles the elder brother is probably the most maligned character in the scripture, because the general disposition is that the elder brother was backslidden at home because he was awful in his attitude and his behavior towards his recovered brother. The tendency and our proclivity is to make the older brother look so horrible because he did not feel as receptive towards the return of his younger brother as did the father. And generally we spend a good deal of the discourse just whipping him profusely because he gives the attitude of a church person who doesn't feel too good about backsliders or people who fall away being recovered. A disposition towards the older brother. Whew. Bishop said I have all the time I want, so I might as well take it. Another person who is so totally maligned and whipped is the other brother called Samson. because none of us can understand why Samson would so continually indulge himself in the Philistine women, and particularly Delilah, especially when he spent some time with her and immediately she said, "The Philistines were upon you," and the Philistines came from behind the couch. And of course, we pulpiteers spend a lot of time whipping him mercilessly because we can't figure out how Samson would go right back to Delilah after she had so completely betrayed him, not once but twice, but 3 times, 4 times. Come on, Samson, don't go back. 5 times. But nobody seems to have read in Judges 14 and about verse 4 that this predilection that Samson had for Philistine women actually was of the Lord. Nobody seems to have picked up that when his mother and father said to him, "Can't you find a good woman anywhere in Israel? And you always have to deal with these bad women over in the Philistine country." Nobody understood that it was God who permitted it in order for God to take cause against the Philistines through Samson's anger. Check it out, check it out, check it out, check it out. If I were to preach that, I would call that sermon a victim of God's purpose, where oftentimes you go through certain things in your life and you don't understand that God has allowed it to happen so that he would ultimately get his purpose wrought or brought through what you had to suffer. The elder brother is so often maligned, but I want to put a case to you today and see whether or not you will go with me. If you having a wonderful job in Atlanta, and if you were set real good with a wonderful 20-room mansion, and you had all the cars you needed, a wonderful wife and family, and you heard that your father was awfully sick and down in Tupelo, Mississippi, and you left the wonders of New York, Southampton, and you headed for Mississippi to suspend your life to take care of your dad. And you stayed with him and nurtured him. You paid all of the insurances. You took care of the yard. You mowed the grass. And you did everything that you were supposed to do for years until he died. Upon the funeral, you arranged for everything to be done and everything to be cooked. And you're sitting in the repast after having struggled with him, and now you've got to rebuild your life. And out from New York and from Miami and from Seattle and from Los Angeles comes all your brothers and sisters. And when they come, they sit around the table, never having showed up for anything for dad, never having done anything while he was sick. And all of a sudden, everybody begins to say, "Now that lamp over there, dad wanted me to have it, and that car that is in the driveway, dad left it for me, and the bed is mine, and you know, dad has been so good to me." Now, I wonder which one of us in here would simply sit there and say, "You ought to take whatever you want," when none of you showed up for anything that was going on here. Now, just be fair with me. Come on. I know you're holy. I know you're a child of God. But I just believe that before we went to fighting up in that house, they would understand you ain't touching nothing up in here. Where were you when my daddy was sick? I wish I could talk to you here. Oh, God. I want you just to notice, if you will, that the older brother was normal. he was no different from any one of us, because we wouldn't sit there and allow our brothers and sisters to come in and take what was ours. Can I take it further? Here is a fella that nobody even invited him to the party, and he's making a case. I've been here all the time, and nobody invited me, and nobody ever killed a fatted calf for me, and yet still here comes this whoremonger back up in here, and you're going to give him my calf, give him my robe, and give him my ring. Now who in here would not be upset? Oh, I wish I could talk to somebody that's real. Who in here would not be mad? The story is not pointing to the older brother. The story is pointing to the splendiferous magnanimity of the father. Because if your father was alive when your brothers wanted the stuff, here's what he would say: they didn't take care of me, they weren't here when I needed them, but please give them what they want. Because a brother's love will never be as great as the father's love, and grace is not fair. Oh, I wish I could talk to somebody in here. Oh, I feel it, I feel it. I'm gonna have some church in here. Give somebody a high five and say, grace is not fair. And I'm not asking God for justice, I'm asking God for grace. Don't give me what I deserve, give me what you want me to have. Oh, I feel it here. It's critical to grasp this, because we have maligned this older brother, and the whole story is pointing to the excellence of the father. The father is so extravagant in his grace and so marvelous in his ability to forgive and to bless that he makes normal look evil. I wish I could say that again. He is so expressive in his grandiloquence of mercy, and he is so expressive in his goodness that if you put God beside normal people, he will make normal people look wicked. His love is so superlative. His power is so great. His willingness to bring you back is so powerful that people who look at you normally look abnormal beside the power of a great God. I feel it. Are you still with me? It is with this in mind that I will forget the elder brother, because I will not see him as wicked, I see him as normal. Now, when you look at the prodigal son, it simply means wasteful spender. And the reason he's a wasteful spender is he does not understand what goes into getting him what he's got. And anytime you have received a lot of stuff without suffering, you really don't understand what it takes to get it. And if you don't understand what it takes to get it, then you certainly don't know what it takes to keep it. That's what Satan wants to do. God has gifted every one of us in here with gifts that he gave us before the foundation of the world. And what Satan would like to do is destroy your character so you can enjoy the gift that God has made you. You see, Satan can't mess with your gift because God gave it to you in eternity. In order for Satan to stop you from being gifted, he has to go into eternity and stop God from giving it to you. But what he can do is, once you have the gift, is stop you from enjoying the gift or wasting your gift because you don't know what it is. But God told me to tell you, he's brought you through so much junk that the next time you move in your gift, there is nothing the devil can do about it. Because I went through too much hell to get where I am. I I feel God here. It is critical to grasp now that the wasteful spender now becomes a tool because he doesn't understand what he has. And so now the lesson has to be taught. The question arises theologically, is this matter here a relationship between creation and redemption? The loss of this son, is it between, the theological issue here, is it between creation in its original state and redemption? Because when God creates, he creates in order to reveal. But there is a side of God that would not have been seen if man had not fallen into sin. There's a side of God, there's an extent of God that could not have been seen if man had stayed proper in his innocence. Because when man fell, now God had to go to another level to bring him back. God, when he fell, God had to give his son. If man had not fallen, it wouldn't be necessary to give his son to bring him back. So there's a side of God we would have never seen if sin didn't enter the world. We see a love of God, a power of God, a sacrificial grace of God that God would have never had to show us if man had not fallen. The next question is it a matter of a person leaving the church? Is it the relationship between the church and a recovered backslider? The third question is it the world as a family with the Son representing all mankind estranged from God? I would rather believe it is the church with a backslidden son or a particular family. Now you might say to me, Bishop, how can you talk about being backslidden in a situation of all of us Christians together? Well, I grew up in church, and there were times when even though my body was in church, I was still backslidden. Oh, I'm gonna preach to you today. Can I take it further? Understand now the Son. The Son is protected, he is loved, and he is cherished. And he reminds me a little bit of Eve. He is within the parameters of his household. He has never been exposed to anything, neither does he know anything outside of the love and the protection of his father. He is like most of us growing up in houses and homes. We did not know what was outside the wall of the house. We just enjoyed the protection of mother and father, the instruction, the love, the kisses. How was he to know when he had always existed in an area of shelter and sequester? How was he to know when everything around him was catered and everything around him was special? How could he know in his mind that outside of this house was actual cruelty that he could not figure out because he was in a place of sequester? Haven't you been there where you never ever thought that certain things were outside of your house because you were completely sequestered and sheltered by the power of a father or mother? So he comes to his dad and he says, give me. But he's always said, give me, because he always had everything at his beck and call. There are some folks in here who couldn't say give me because there was nothing to give, but there were some people in here who could always say give me because they had everything, sheltered by mama, sheltered by daddy. How was he to know that outside of his house were molesters who were just waiting to execute the most horrendous crime against him? How was he to know that evil relatives would molest him or her in a sexual manner. Can I talk to you? How was I to know that I could be molested sexually at 7 years old? Because I was sheltered by my mother and father. How was I to know that people would wait to destroy the very truth that was put in you while you were growing up? How were you to know that you had folks who were waiting to break promises and folk who were waiting to pull you into love, and when your love blossomed they drop you like a hot potato? How were you to know, growing up as a little child, the enormous gripping effect of feeling guilty for what somebody else was doing to you? How were you to know that you could go to a party one night and end up on some substance that would take the next 15 years of your life to be delivered from? I want to talk to some real people in here. How were you to know the difficulty of recovering from destroyed ideals and having your life corrupted by folk who were just vulturing like vultures, seeking to feed on your body, your soul, and your spirit? How were you to know that everything that wrapped its arms around you didn't really love you nor care about you? I feel God in here. How were you to know that everybody giving you candy didn't love you, but were using the candy to suck you in, to destroy your virginity and your chastity? How were you to know that just riding with your buddy down to the liquor store would have given you 5 to 10 in jail when you had no intentions of stealing anything? Give me